Well, welcome. Welcome to Satsang. So beautiful to be together with you all. We'll start as usual with a question that's come in advance, and then open it up to any questions that anyone here might have. Other than turning our devices off, is there a way to combat the distractions of social media and media in general? Absolutely there is. You know, the disease of distraction is not something that was created by social media. It was not created by our devices. If you go back to our scriptures were talking about the monkey mind. Long before we had devices that beeped and blinked and binged and vibrated and whatnot. So distraction is actually a quality of the mind. Our devices have just co-opted that. Social media has just co-opted that. It hasn't created distraction. The people who are creating algorithms on social media are doing so based on how our brains already act. So, yes, number one, there absolutely should be no phone times. Now, there's no equation for that. We've all got different responsibilities, different lives. But what's important is that we give ourselves at least some time, whether it's a certain period of time in a day, whether it's in a week, however we're doing it, but a time in which we are not at the beck and call of anyone who has access to our device or any of our apps or any of our social media accounts. Otherwise, whatever we're doing, let's say you want to be meditating, you want to be reading a book, you want to be having a conversation, you want to be writing something, you want to be working on a project that means something to you and that requires attention. And every 5 seconds your device is going, you're not going to be able to give your attention to it. I've shared before, but our satsang audience changes, every night. It's worth sharing again. I was reading a study recently of the fact that the average worker in the average workplace is able to work for only 3 minutes at a time before they're distracted. Now, whether it's not always the devices, it could be somebody from the next cubicle leaning over and saying something. But most of the time, it's the phone, it's the email, it's notifications, it's WhatsApp, whatever it may be. 3 minutes. An average of 3 minutes without being interrupted. Now, that's part one of the data. Part two is that in 1 hour of working, in which you are distracted every 3 minutes, your IQ points drop by 10 points in the course of an hour. On average. They've done this research. They take people's IQ at the beginning of the hour. They do it again at the end of the hour. You know, they've got their control groups and whatnot. Those who have been constantly distracted like that, their IQ has dropped by 10 points during the course of the hour. Now, if you did no work at all, and you simply sat at your desk and smoked marijuana, your IQ would drop by 5 points in an hour. Again, they've done the work, they've done the data. Now, what that means is that our current way of working is actually making us stupider than if we simply sat at our desk and got high all day and didn't actually do any work. Now, that's for me, it was a really, really powerful piece of research. As people who have sworn off drugs and alcohol and all forms of, intoxicants, the idea that actually the way that we work is taking away more of my brain than if I actually just sat there and took drugs. So I share that because we need time, first of all, in which there's no phone at all, just no device at all. But chances are you're not going to be able to give yourself too much of that. And it doesn't have to be an all or nothing situation. The device is also a great tool. It's a help in so many ways. We actually use it. And that's the key. We need to use it rather than it using us. And so some really quick and easy tools are, number one, turn off all your notifications. Nothing should beep or ding on your phone other than an actual phone call. If somebody's actually calling you, let it ring. If you want to go a step beyond that, put it on Do Not Disturb or Focus, where it'll only ring if one of your selected people is calling. It's a fantastic way of having control. You're working, you're reading, you're sleeping, you're meditating. Now, of course, you don't want to miss an emergency call from a loved one, a family member. You're at work. You're working on an important project. You don't want to miss it if your boss calls during the workday. So you're able actually to program it in such a way that either it only makes noise if someone's calling, or it only makes noise if someone you've allocated is calling. But just stop all of the rest of the notifications. Yes, we get messages, text messages, WhatsApp messages, but my feeling always is, if it's an emergency, they'll call. I cannot even imagine someone saying, well, I got into this horrible car accident. I was bleeding along the side of the road. I texted you, you didn't answer, so I died. You'd call. You'd call. If it's an emergency, they're going to call you. If it's something super urgent, people will pick up the phone and make a call. Look at your messages on your schedule, not on someone else's. Not they've sent it, so you must look immediately. Set up a schedule. Depending on your role, your work, maybe it's once an hour. Maybe it's twice a day. Whatever it may be, but set up something so that you're in control, not the device in control. And as far as social media, for God's sakes, do not have it give you any kind of notifications with noise or without noise. If you want to go on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Go on it on your own time. See what you want to see. But do not have your phone be sending you things. With every post, like, comment, share. It's literally handing over your life, your freedom, on the altar of someone else's financially based algorithms. I mean, they've designed this with one thing and one thing in mind only, which is grab your attention. If I know someone's got such a nefarious motivation, why in the world would I hand over my attention? They're clearly not looking out for our best interest. We know it's all about business. So stop letting them run how you think, what you do. Nothing wrong with social media. Just go on it on your own term, on your own time. See what you want to see. There's no reason to get these notifications. And then what you'll find slowly is the device becomes a tool in your hands rather than vice versa. Otherwise, we literally become slaves. As I always say, slaves to an algorithm. Somebody's written it. They've studied neurology. They've studied psychology. They've studied human behavior. And they've written code that hijacks the very habitual nature of us as humans for their own benefit. Don't give it to them. Just in the same way that we see so many advertisements for things, but we don't buy them. We understand it's just an ad. It's not really true. Just by smoking Marlboro cigarettes, I'm not going to be the Marlboro man. I'm not going to, be riding my horse out into the sunset on this deserted, beautiful pasture. No, cigarettes don't bring freedom. We know that. They bring illness and death. So we don't buy them, regardless of the advertisements. But the devices in social media and media has become the same. It's just selling us something by hijacking our minds. So reclaim your mind. If you're going to work with your thoughts, as Pujya Swamiji was speaking about in the Arati tonight, well, first you've got to work with the mind in general. You've only got access to your thoughts when you can be aware of them. Most of us don't even have access to our thoughts because we're so busy simply reacting. Stimulus, response, stimulus, response. Take back the working of your mind so that you can take back your awareness, take back your focus. There's nothing that is worthy of achievement in life. From enlightenment, to playing the piano, to writing a book, to having a nap, to anything that can be done in bursts of 3 minutes in between interruptions. That which is worth having in life and doing and achieving in life requires us to be able to be present with it. So take back your life. It's a tool. It's got an on-off button. It's got a volume button. It's got all sorts of notification options. Use them. Let us be the ones in charge. And you'll see your entire nervous system, your entire mind will let out a very big when there's just a little bit of space in your mind. Questions? Yes. Just one sec, he's going to give you the mic.
How to overcome our fear?
How do our karma?
Our fear.
Oh, how do we overcome our fears? Thank you. So, first of all, realize that fear in and of itself is not bad. We are here because our ancestors were afraid. We are the descendants of those who feared. Imagine that you go back a few hundred years, a few thousand years, and you've got our ancestors, and they're sitting around doing whatever our ancestors did in that particular era, whichever one you choose. And suddenly, the earth starts to thump. And they know that it's a herd of wild elephants, or a tiger, or a lion, or whatever it was that was the animal to be afraid of in that place at that time. Well, there's two groups. One group has a fear response. We call it the fight or flight nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system. It sends all of the blood from inside our being to our arms, to our legs, to get us ready to fight or to flee. Those are the people who ran away, or who brought out their bows and arrows or whatever they used. And then there's the people who didn't have the fear response. And they said, dekhte, let's see, no problem. They didn't make it through that night. They did not procreate. They did not have offspring. The ones who ran, or who got out the bow and arrow, who were afraid and hence prepared, are the ones who lived long enough to procreate and have offspring. We are the descendants of those who were smart enough to be afraid. So fear is not your enemy when it's a fear of that which keeps us alive. The dilemma has become in recent years that instead of being afraid of that which actually is dangerous to our life, heights, deep water, wild animals, we've become afraid much more of ego death than physical body death. So we are afraid of being embarrassed. Oh my God, I couldn't do that. I would just die of embarrassment. What if people laugh at me? What if I try and I fail? It'll be humiliating. That's the stuff now that sends our heart racing, makes our palms sweaty. We start to have these sympathetic nervous system responses. The number one fear people have is public speaking. Which is really interesting because nobody ever died giving a bad speech. Right? I mean, let's say your worst fear comes true and it's horrible. You make a complete fool of yourself. Well, nobody ever died from that. But the number one fear, more than fire, water, heights, elephants, tigers, is public speaking. We are afraid of ego death. We're afraid of what if people don't see me, appreciate me, acknowledge me, respect me. Because then on a deep level, I will feel like I don't exist. As long as I need the appreciation, the acknowledgement, the love of those around me, whether it's friends and colleagues, whether it's an online following, as long as I need that to feel like I exist, then yeah, I'm going to be afraid. What if this one's angry at me? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I fail and they know that I'm a failure? We get afraid to start things, to take risks. Oh my God, what if it doesn't work? I'll be so embarrassed. I'll die. This is the fear we need to overcome. Don't stop being afraid of elephants and tigers and storms in the ocean if you're on a little rowboat. But we need to overcome that fear of ego death. And the only way to do it, number one, it's a multi-step thing. Phase one, realize you're not the ego. Realize that you're not it. It could die. You could be humiliated. You could make a fool of yourself. Everyone could laugh. But you wouldn't actually cease to exist. You're not the ego. And so do that spiritual work when we watch our thoughts, we watch our emotions, we watch the rise of the ego. It's the practice of mindfulness. Not just while we're meditating, but in our day. And you'll notice it if you start to become aware. Seemingly out of the blue, your heart is racing, you're all kind of flustered and bothered. And you realize it's because suddenly you're worried. What are you going to say? What is somebody going to think? Can you take this risk? And just become aware of it. And realize you are not that ego which is afraid. And the second step is to actually start taking risks. Show yourself. Do things you're afraid of. Fear of public speaking? Get up and do it. I'm not saying it's going to be a fantastic success. You may discover that you've got a brand new calling that you had no idea about, but you may not. You may literally freeze in the middle of your sentence. But what you're going to learn is you don't cease to exist. There you are, in the middle of forgetting your lines, the middle of public embarrassment. But there you are. You have not ceased to exist. So really start to actually take some risks. I don't mean silly, stupid things, but ask yourself, what is it I'm not doing? Because I'm worried that it might not work. I'm worried that it might fail. I'm worried that I might look like a fool. I'm worried that people might think I'm a fool. And just do it. If it works, beautiful. If it doesn't work, you will learn that, you know what? You can do things that don't work, and you don't cease to exist. The universe does not open up to suck you out because you no longer deserve your place on planet Earth. But we spend our lives in fear. And instead we are supposed to really step up to the plate of our life and realize we're here to experience divinity. We are here to channel the divine flow. And so what other people think really stops being the issue. So many lives are ruined by worrying ki samne wale kya sochega. Log kya kahenge? What are people going to say? What are they going to think? We ruin our lives. So move forward even in the face of the fear. And what you'll find is slowly the fear stops. It only has a hold on you as long as you listen to it. But the minute you say, I'm afraid, but I'm doing it anyway, you'll develop a whole new habit. And it's one that's going to really strengthen you inside. And lastly, realize that unknown that you're jumping into is the arms of the divine. My favorite way of thinking about this is we do these trust falls in, you do them in school, you do them in corporate team building programs, where you stand with someone. Could be a stranger, could be an enemy, a competitor. And you fall back in their arms. Now, even if that person is an enemy, they're not going to let me fall and crack my head open and die. You fall back. And if we can have that faith in an enemy, in a stranger, can't we have that faith in the divine? Will trust fall into the arms of an enemy or a stranger, but not into God? Not into the universe? So trust fall into the arms of the divine, knowing that you have no idea where you're going to land, but you trust the arms you're falling into. And that's the greatest antidote to fear, is faith. Doesn't mean that what we want happens. Doesn't mean the universe is a vending machine and it's going to give us everything we ask for. But it means we're being held and caught in the hands of God. So there's nowhere to fall, really. Other questions? Yeah.
I have a lot to learn, so I hope
We all do.
I hope I can find the right words. Working on finding my karmic path, raising consciousness. One of the many things I might stumble on, besides all the obvious things you've mentioned already in the previous times, kindness and truth. We seek to always speak and share the truth, and always speak and share kindness. And if it's not kind,
What do you do?
what do you do?
Yes.
And still seek to honor the divine in the person that you're with and you love.
Beautiful.
Where do you go with the truth?
So in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna tells us that spiritual speech, tapas of speech, right speech, dharmic speech, is three things: true, kind, and beneficial. And if it isn't all three of those things, don't speak it. Now, kind doesn't always mean kind to their ego. Our greatest benefit in life is not having people walk on eggshells, is not having everyone cater to our ego. We were talking about this last night or the night before. So being kind to someone isn't always, I'm not going to say this because I know you don't want to hear it. Sometimes we need to say things that someone may not want to hear, as long as we are really sure within ourselves that it is actually kind in the bigger picture, and that it is actually beneficial in the bigger picture. And that's the key that we have to ask ourselves is it actually kind and beneficial? Because truth at all costs doesn't work so well. I always love to share my personal story on this, which is from my last year of high school. And my boyfriend, I thought he was my soulmate. He was the love of my life. He's actually still one of my very best friends. He was a year older than I am. And so we had started together my junior year, my second to last year, his last year of high school. And then he went off to college. And I was still in high school. And my dad says to me one day, my dad who's a divorce lawyer, says to me one day, so what are you and Eric going to do now that you're so far away from each other? And I said, well, we're going to be together forever because, of course, we're soulmates. But we're going to have an open relationship because we're so far away. So we're going to date other people, but we're going to be totally honest with each other about it. And my dad says, so let me get this straight. You're going to date other people, tell each other about it, and stay together forever. And in my 17-year-old naivete, believing in just the truth at all costs, I said, yes. And he looked at me and he said, so brilliantly, he said, not, what are you, crazy? He said, well, I look forward to hearing how that works out for you. Gold star, blue ribbon, #1 of how to parent a teenager. Right? Just not, are you crazy? But, oh, very interesting. I look forward to hearing how that works out for you. Now, I share the story because a lot of us have this truth at all costs sense of if it's true, by nature it must be kind. And it must be beneficial. Sure, of course you should know about the people I'm dating. Because it's true, and therefore it's in the service of... That was many, many years before I got my first copy of the Bhagawati. So it's got to be true, it's got to be kind, and it's got to be beneficial. And that's a tough one, but it's very powerful. And it also leads to a lot of moments of silence, where we simply realize this just doesn't need to be spoken. It doesn't tick all boxes. And so we don't speak it. There's a fourth one I've heard some people add. It's not in the Gita, but I've heard people add it from the Buddhist tradition, which is beautiful, which is it also has to improve upon the silence. It should be true, it should be kind, it should be beneficial, and it should improve upon the silence. It should be something better than just sitting here in silence. If it doesn't improve upon the silence, then stay silent. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. We'll start with you. One of you had a question. We'll start with you tomorrow. Okay, we'll take you first tomorrow. Okay, sure, no problem. We'll end with it tonight.
Thank you, first of all, for all the love that is here already. I wanted to ask, being in a 20 years, more or less, starting from Tai Chi thing, I have a question that maybe is already answered, but if I have the feel that a karmatic thing is there because messages or situations or ayahuasca ceremonies, if I feel that I'm working with that, which way do you think that would be the right thing to manage that karmatic past life?
Okay. So you're working with some karma from a past life through a lot of different means and ways. And you're asking what is the best way to work with that. Right? So first of all, that which we've done in our past lives, karma means action. So the actions that we've done in our past lives are not actually things that we need to directly work with now. That life is done. We've done that act. We can't rewind history. You can't even rewind it in this life, let alone go back to an earlier life. What we have now are what we call the karmic fruits, the ramifications of that action that we did. And that's now what's in front of us, is I'm facing a situation in my life that it seems to me from different experiences I've had is due to something from a past life. Okay. Well, everything that we have right now is due to something from the past anyway. Whether it's due to something I did a week ago, an hour ago, or 10 lifetimes ago. It doesn't really matter where it came from, unless you're trying to learn a lesson not to do it again. Then of course it's helpful to know, what did I do that has created the current situation, so we can learn to act more skillfully in the future. But mostly what matters is, here's where I am now. Because ultimately where we are is not due to just one act I did in one past life. It's due to all of that. From earlier lives, from earlier in this life, from an hour ago. We've got 3 different types of karma. I won't go into them in detail, but you can think of them kind of as long-term karma, short-term karma, the type that is bearing its fruit right here in this life, and our immediate karma. And where we are in every moment, what we've got, our current destiny, is a mix of all of those 3 things. Not one act, one story from one past life. So wherever you are, whatever situation you are going through, your question needs to be right here, right now, in this life, in this body, with this set of skills, abilities, experiences, histories. What is the best way for me to act right here, right now? In order to do that, I have to understand who I am. We meditate to understand who we are. We inquire, quite literally, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? It's a beautiful path of Jnana Yoga. Who am I? And we then make choices about how to act that end up determining our destiny an hour from now, a week from now, a month from now, next life. Because that's the only thing I have any control over. The work that I'm doing right now is work for my present and for my future. My work with the past is really simply to see it, acknowledge it, bow to it, take any lesson that is needed, and then let it go. And move into the present moment. If there are things lingering from the past, then my work around letting go is deeper and longer. But it's the same work. It's all about letting it go. Otherwise, we carry the past into the present. So focus on where you are right here, right now. What are your choices right here, right now? How can you be fully aware, conscious, present, right here, right now, with who you really are now? Not who you were then, but who you are now. So that you know how to move in the co-creation of your own future, your own destiny. Okay? Beautiful. So start facing forward instead of back. Beautiful. Have a wonderful rest of your evenings. A beautiful morning and day to our family joining from around the world. And I look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow. And so much love to you.